Hey guys, it's Shannon again, and I'm just going to show you real quick how to put our awesome new fairy wings on your subject. So I'm actually going to place it on this sweet, beautiful little girl today. So I already picked out some wings. You'll see in the shop that we have quite a few to choose from, and just based on her outfit and the greenery and whatnot behind her, I'm going to go ahead and just place these purple wings on her because I thought that they would go really well. But you'll see tons of different options in our shop. So anyways, here we go. Let's go ahead and do this. So this photo is actually already edited. So I kind of perfected everything, and you can kind of place your wings however you like to. You can put them in there before you add any light, before you even get started, just so you're kind of editing everything together. But in this case, I already have this image edited, and now I'm kind of just deciding to put on the wings. So that's how I'm going to do it. So if I were to put on the wings right now, I feel like that they would like kind of creep over here into this space over here a little bit, and it just wouldn't look very balanced. So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to expand this image just a little bit so I have a little bit more space to work with and then I'll basically probably recrop it so that we still fall in the rule of thirds. So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab my crop tool, and I'm just going to drag it over just to give me a little bit more space to work with. I'm going to press enter. And so this is basically, all this is doing is it's kind of pulling this color, whatever color I happen to have in the palette over here. So that's all it's doing. But obviously we don't want it to be blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab this marquee right here. And I'm just going to do a little square right there on that whole side. And so now that I have that area selected, and I just kind of brought it over into the image itself and that coloring just a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push edit, and then I'm going to do edit fill, and then I'm going to do content aware, and I press OK. And Photoshop is going to kind of do its thing here, and it's going to fill in that space for us. And we'll just kind of give it a minute. So if you're wondering too, this image was shot with my 70 to 200 millimeter, and then I just did all of my hand edits in Photoshop. Yeah, so if you have the 70 to 200, this is probably at a 2.8. I really love that lens. Okay, so almost there. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to select, deselect, and you can see a lot of repeating patterns. So I won't, well, maybe I'll do it a little bit. So let's clean it up just a little bit. So a dead giveaway when you're editing or doing the clone stamp is repeating patterns. So obviously like these little bits kind of are all the same and they stand out to me. So what I do is I'm just going to grab my patch tool that's over here, and I'm just going to take little parts and I'm going to drag it around just so that it doesn't look like we have that repeating patterns. Like I said, it can look a little cheesy sometimes, and it's just kind of a dead giveaway to somebody who's kind of new to Photoshop. So I really like to make sure that there aren't any of those repeating patterns, and I can make it look like everything was really meant to be, and smooth and no repeating patterns. So here we go. So that's actually not too bad. I can always go back and adjust a little bit more if I need to. Maybe this little guy. And there's lots of other things I can do, but that's a good place to start for now. So what I'm going to do, when I go to place the wings, I'm going to have multiple layers. And so what we're going to start with is we're going to come over here and I'm going to grab the wings. So if I were to drag this whole thing over, I feel like it doesn't really fit the image itself. So I really just like these wings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my lasso tool, and I'm going to grab the right wing, and I'm going to be right down the middle, and then I'm just going to select it. Okay, so just that wing is selected. So you could grab this whole thing if you wanted to, and there's different perspectives of the wings, so that's super helpful, but I just really like this one wing for whatever reason, and so I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to drag it over into the image. And there we go. Okay, so obviously this wing is maybe just a little bit too bright for the image itself, so I'm going to show you how you guys can kind of do some shifting to make the wings that we do have work better for your images. So even if they're kind of a completely different color, there's a lot that you can do so that it better fits your image and the overall look that you are wanting. So maybe you like this wing, but you would prefer it to be in, like, say, a yellow. I'm going to show you how to do that. So now that we're on that wing layer, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to go to, Image Adjustment, and I'm going to do Hue Saturation. And now, so what it's doing is just kind of reading all the information from that one wing. So say you wanted to kind of shift the color a little bit, all you have to do, so in your master up here, so it's recognizing all colors, and then you can just kind of play with this slider and you can change the color of your wings however you want it to be. Maybe you want it to be a pink wing, maybe you want to go more towards the greens, or obviously orange or red, or however you want to do it. You can adjust the wing to be what you want it to be. So I'm going to keep it, I kind of like the color of that purpley blue that it is. So we're going to keep it in there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it down just a little bit so it kind of fits the scene. So I'm going to bring down the lightness so it's a little bit darker. Now we're press OK. And then what we need to do, so obviously this wing is not perfectly placed. It doesn't work right there. So we really have to kind of think about the perspective, and if she had wings on her back, what they would look like based on where she's turned, or how she's turned and how she's facing us and whatnot. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to go to Transform, and I'm going to do, let's do Distort. So it's going to select just the wings. So I'm going to start by turning it a little. Actually, let's do this. I'm going to stretch it out a little. And then we'll do this. I'm going to press Enter. And then I would push Command T to transform it. And I'm going to shift it just a little. Maybe not quite that much. There we go. And so it's looking a little too small for her. So I'm going to drag this out. So if you push Shift, it just kind of holds it where it's at and it won't distort the wing at all. It will just kind of help it to keep it its exact shape, just like that. So that looks pretty good. I don't like my wings to be too big. Like, I don't like it to overpower the kid or the child or whoever you're putting it on. I just like it to have them as more of like an accent, leaving the subject as a focus. I mean, you can make them huge and larger than life if you really wanted to. That's just kind of my own personal style. So, and then when I'm placing the wings, I almost think of like where, if it was on her back, I think of like where it would be touching on her back. So maybe about like right in there works for me. Okay, and so then what I'm going to do is, obviously we don't want it sitting on top of the girl. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to duplicate our background. And press OK. And then we're going to take this layer and we're just simply going to drag it behind that other layer. So basically we have like a wing sandwich here. So we have the backgrounds, and then we have the wing. It's kind of like, almost if you think of it like a piece of paper, it's like in between those other two background copies. All right, so then we're going to go up here and I'm going to use this copy and I'm going to add a masking layer to it. I'm going to press that. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to come over here, we're going to grab a brush, and we can just simply erase certain parts of that top layer to reveal the wing that's underneath it, if that makes sense. So we're basically erasing that layer that we created in certain parts, and it's a direct copy of that, the base image, so that even if we were to like erase this tree or whatever we do, it's still there because it's on the bottom layer. Okay, so then what we do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to select this girl. So I'm going to go, so instead of being on the masking layer box here, I'm going to click on the actual image, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do a quick select tool, because I'm going to select her hair and her face and her body, shoulders, and the arms. Here we go. Here we go. Sorry if you're hearing toys in the background. That would be my kiddos. Here we go. Okay, so now that I have that kind of selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my refine tool. If you are in Creative Cloud, you'll have the sliders on the side to help you kind of feather it, but because I'm still in an older version, the CS6 of Photoshop, this is how I do refine edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically follow the outline of her hair, and it's going to feather those edges. So when I go to erase part of, or the areas of that background so that you can reveal the wings, it's going to take into consideration those little tiny parts in between there, and so it'll blend a little bit better. So then I'm going to come back over here to, or actually let's do this. So it's just, she's selected. So what I have to do is now I have to do select and do inverse. And then you'll see like this selection of the perimeter of the image there as well. So that means everything is selected now except for this little girl and her face and that, area that we had initially selected. So we're going to come over here to this masking layer. And then we're going to go back to our black brush and we're going to erase that background again. So basically what it's doing now is it's just kind of revealing that background a little bit more, but so we could come over onto the girl in that area that we have, but she's still going to be there because we have her basically selected and cut out. Here we go. And I'm going to go up high because I know that we're going to have that wing there a little bit later. Okay, so now let's see where we're at. So select, deselect, and that looks pretty good. I might go in just a little bit. So I work with a Wacom tablet, which I love because then I have the ability to go back in and kind of put things back in. So if I use a white brush and I get a really nice fine edge, small brush here, what I can do is I can actually just go in and start drawing hairs back in. I don't know, hopefully you guys can see this. But then what it does is, so I can draw those hairs back in, and then she, like it looks like hairs, but you're still seeing the wings come through behind it. Let me make it a little bit of a smaller brush. And I'm just gonna mimic the shapes of her hair. And so because her hair is actually already behind it, the color's already there, everything's already there that we need. I'm just basically being strategic about how I put it back in. So when I'm using the Wacom tablet, it's like coloring or drawing, so you have like this really fine brush, and so I'm just drawing fine little hairs to help it blend. So I might make it a little bit bigger because there's some parts down here that look like they need to come back. Little parts of her dress, little feathers. Here we go. So let me back up and see where we're at. It's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna come in here with another brush, and I would just want to fill in her hair there just a little bit more. So let's see here. There we go. So another small brush again, and just some little extra bits. And there we go. That's looking pretty good. So the perspective of that wing is looking pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and add another one. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to come down here to this wing layer, and I'm going to press duplicate layer. I'm going to press OK. And then, so that wing is there, it's behind her. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go up here to Edit, and I'm going to do Transform, and then I'm going to do Distort. So if you're looking, so the wing farther back is going to be slightly smaller and it's going to be at a slightly different angle. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. So I want it to maybe like come up right over here. So you have to think of like if you're looking at a butterfly and how the wings kind of like V off in separate directions, but one looks smaller than the other just based on perspective. That's kind of what we're going for here. So let's go ahead and start kind of dragging things to get it to where we want it. So maybe right in there, bring this one up. Make it smaller. Okay, so maybe bring that in. Looking pretty good. Okay, so now it looks kind of funny because it's actually on top of that other wing, so the perspective doesn't look right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to that layer, and I'm just going to drag it behind that front wing, and you can see it looks just a little bit better there. So what I'm going to do before I do too much to it, so because it's like a little bit farther back, generally it'll be a little bit darker because it's a little bit farther away from the light source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, I'm going to go to edit, and, or excuse me, let's do image adjustment, and then let's do exposure. And I'm going to bring down that exposure just a bit. And I'm going to up the gamma just a little bit to kind of deepen it. Let's see where I'm at. It looks pretty good to me. I'm going to press OK. And I'm also going to add a blur to it. So you can see, you can see right here, so this shoulder of hers is a little bit more in focus than this back shoulder. So it would only make sense to blur that other wing a little bit. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to go to, because we're still on that layer, I'm going to come up here to Filter, Blur, and I'm going to do Gaussian Blur on this one. And it's just going to be the slightest of blurring. So I think I maybe go a little bit higher. So maybe like a 5. There we go. That's not too bad. I'm going to press OK. And then, so that wing is sticking up just a little bit too high for me. So I'm going to push Command T and I'm going to transform it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink it down just a bit. And I'm going to press Enter. Okay, so let's see here. And then I'm actually going to add a masking layer to it because there's just little bits of that little white area that I want to kind of mask off just a little bit. So I'm going to get a slightly bigger brush, so maybe about like that. But I'm going to change the opacity. I'm just going to make it like really pretty low. So somewhere around 30 or so. And I'm just going to start kind of brushing off those brighter areas just so it doesn't look like it's glowing or... Well, I mean, I guess the glow is too much, but those little white areas, I don't want them too prominent. Looks pretty good to me. Okay. I'm going to go back to the wing itself. And I'm going to adjust it a little bit more. So let's go to Image, Edit, and we're going to do Transform, and then I'm going to Skew. So I might bring it this way just a tiny. We're doing pretty good. Okay, so I still feel like this wing is maybe a little bit too bright as well. So I'm going to come up to our first wing layer and I'm going to go to Image, Adjustment, Levels. And so what I'm seeing here is like maybe like the whites in the image are just a little bit too bright. So I'm going to come over here. So I'm not going to use this one because that will brighten the whites so you can kind of see. So I'm going to leave it all the way over and I'm going to come down here to your output levels. And so that basically tells you where the base of the whites is stemming from. So I want to bring that base down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just drag this guy closer to the blacks and you can kind of see how much it brings down that white. So it's going to be about like right there is good. So you can kind of see the difference. Good. I'm going to press OK. And actually, let me bring down my midpoints here. So these are like the gray areas, so your mid-tone shadows. Bring that down just a little bit. I'm going to press OK. So we're looking pretty good there, actually. So I'm going to add a masking layer to it, and I might do kind of the same thing with erasing some of those whites. So maybe just right in here a little bit, right on the edge of the wings. Okay. That looks pretty good. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna add a slight blur to it too, just to kind of take off that harsh edge of it. So I'm gonna go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And then obviously we don't want it to be as blurred as the back wing. So we're gonna, oops, press cancel. You actually have to be on the wing. So I was on the masking box, so we weren't seeing anything. So you actually have to come over here and select the wing. And let's do that again. So Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. So like I said, you don't want it to be all the way to 5 because that's what we did the back one. So that does not make any sense. So you want the front one is going to be a little bit more in focus. So let's bring it up to, we'll just do it just real slightly. So about a 1, somewhere in there is pretty good. I'll press OK. And that is looking pretty good. I might add just a little bit of sparkle. So let's see here. Sometimes I like to zoom out and just make sure my perspective and everything is right in terms of like where the wings are. If you like where the wings are laying as well, but you feel like as a whole they need to shift, but you have 2 different wings that you're working with, but you don't want them to like move too much. So you can actually select both layers, and if you push Command or Control T, you can drag them around that way. So like if I hold Shift, then it won't skew, and you can make those wings just a little bit bigger. Which I actually really like that. So let me zoom in, make sure everything's still looking pretty good here. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Layer, Flatten Image. And so this is in it's in a box, obviously, because we added that little extra bit over here. So what I want to do is I want to bring my rule of thirds back into place. So I like the image, but I just wanted that space a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this guy over, and I'm just going to make sure that the whole thing is, like I said, my rule of thirds are where I want them. So that's pretty good to me. It looks really good. So another thing you can do is in the shop we also have the fairy dust, which I really love. So I'm going to come down here. My fairy dust is right there, and I'm going to pick a color that kind of works for the image. So I want it to be a light shade. So I'm going to come in here to like this light kind of whatever. This is like a grayish purple, I guess. Maybe I'll pick one of these. Oh, I'm going to pick one of these sparkles on her shirt. That's good. So I like the color, but it maybe is still a little bit too dark for me. So I'm just going to take it. I'm just going to, so you can see that's the color. And I'm just going to select a slightly lighter shade, more towards the white, maybe not too much. Press OK. And then I'm going to just take my brush and I'm going to start adding a little bit of sparkle. And I like little hints of sparkle. I don't like it to go too much. Let's do this. So I'm going to duplicate the layer in case I need to erase some. Press OK. looking pretty good. Like I said, I just like little hints of sparkle. I mean, you can go as heavy as you really want to because this is super pretty. And the way the brush was built, it kind of like throws them out sporadically, and so it looks really nice. So there we go. Do a little thing there. Maybe a little one up here. And so the brush that I'm using, it's only at like 31%, but obviously you could take it a little bit higher if you wanted to, as far as opacity goes, and you can make it a little bit more glittery. Yeah, I think I liked it a little bit more faint. So let me do some maybe on the edges again. So with and without the glitter. Might bring it down just a little bit. I think that looks really good. All right, so that's probably about all that I would do to this image. Obviously, you can interpret the wings however you want to do it, but at least now you know how to like add a little bit of perspective. You can shift the colors if you want to. So really, the sky is the limit with the wings. There's definitely something in the shop for everybody. The red wings are phenomenal. I mean, Grace just did a fantastic job at building these. So. I hope you guys learned so much. Before I go, actually, let's show you the before and after. So here is the before, and there's the after. Before and after. So, all right, guys, well, I hope you learned so much. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to message us anytime. And we are always happy to walk you through everything. So have a great day, guys. Bye.